Orange County Communications Director. I marked my 6th month of employment here last week, so I'll take that. Time is really flying. So welcome to this is our 3rd quarter Orange County Communicators meeting. And of course, we're still dealing with recovering from Chantal. So we wanted to pull out time today of talking about that situation, the good points, and the points we can improve on, or opportunities there. So we wanted to begin today with an awesome panel that Kristin has assembled here before us. And I'll introduce them, starting on this side. Kristin Prelipp, Orange County Communications. Beside her is Alex. Say your last name. I don't say it wrong. Carrasquillo. Cheryl Sadgrove with Town of Hillsborough. So Alex with Town of Chapel Hill. And back here in the rear, Hannah Tuckman with Orange County Emergency Services, and Miss Katie Hall with OWASA, Captain Lazorko with Town of Carrboro, and Kelly Hunter with the City of Mebane. And so, such a experienced and large panel, we're going to ask them to just take 3 to 5 minutes, if you could, for your talking points, and begin with kind of set up the situation of how things was during Chantal and after Chantal in your organization or in your locale. Talk about what you think went well during the event afterwards, and also what you wish would have gone better, or what can you improve on for next time. Make sense? We'll start with you, Kristin. You can go.
Okay, thank you. And Libbie's going to keep us straight. She's going to keep track of what went well and what we're going to work on. And I've got a video going, so we won't forget all this good stuff. Well, so like most of you, I was on vacation when tropical Chantal was coming. It was just I would say, bad timing with 4th of July week. I was generally aware because I check the news every day and get a little PTSD from storms now. But I knew that we were in the cone of uncertainty, and that Sunday morning, July 6th, I was doing the check your email before you go back to work after being gone for a week, and saw chatter, and so started communicating with emergency services. And during the day, we were just working using our wonderful, so this goes in the gray column, our multilingual emergency messages. They're in 5 different languages. We were able to, at the time we just thought it would be a couple inches of rain, maybe 3, so things like what's the difference between a flood watch and a warning, turn around, don't drown, what to do if your power goes out, those kind of things. But as the day went along, we kind of saw that things were getting worse. And just a quick note about the multilingual resources. I recently became a part of a group. It's actually out of Seattle, King County, Washington. It's called, it's a long acronym, but basically it's the Language and Accessibility and Alert Warning Work Group. They are nationwide, they share resources, they have amazing Excel spreadsheets for all these messages with 20 languages. So that's very exciting. We can create a lot more messages that we'll have ready for next time, not just the before stuff, but afterwards. I wish I had a lot of things about what to do with your fridge if you lost your power, or be careful when you're cleaning up, that kind of stuff. So back to July 6th, as you know, the forecast worsened. The EOC ended up activating at 11 p.m. It stayed open 24/7 through that July 12th at 8 p.m. So this leads me to another thing which I would like to improve upon next time. I would love it if Orange County and just all of us in general had a deeper bench. So I ended up working, all day Sunday, staying up all night, and then being there all day Monday. I'm sure everybody had similar experiences, but it made me think back to COVID-19 when we had a JIC, and a lot of you in here were part of that JIC. But when I look back at what it took to set up that JIC, the Joint Information Center, for those of you who don't know, it took obviously several days to identify all the needs and identify staff who could fill those needs, train those staff. And at that time, we had every single staff member write a how-to document. So let's say my job was to do the OC alerts. I would have a how-to so that if I was out sick, somebody else could do it. So now in the quiet time, when the sun is out, we could kind of create what would a JIC look like, and there would have been a point there. I think we should have just started a JIC. So when you're in the EOC, you're drinking from a fire hose. I'd say a positive things that we're also connected, so I always feel like I know who to call, and I hope you all know who to call from Orange County. But I do wish that we had more of those kind of JIC kind of things going on. Like, for instance, Kevin Smith suggested from his time in Helene, let's have a shared Google document. Love the idea. Got it started, checked out it a couple times, and honestly, it just fell off. But if there was a person in the JIC who that was their job to keep that thing going, that would be fantastic. Also, maybe Google Doc isn't the best way, because I know for Orange County, we have a really hard time accessing that. So if anybody has an idea for a platform that's easy for everybody to add and edit and refer to, that'd be fantastic. That first day on Monday, we held a morning meeting with all of you all, and then we switched to media events at noon, and that's what we did for the next couple of days. If I had a magic wand and a time machine, I would go back and we would just have a room that was open all the time and a person in the JIC that was just there, and then maybe go ahead and do like a separate from media, like a JIC or a communicator briefing at a day, at a time that makes sense to everybody, 9 or 10 in the morning. I wish we also had somebody that was just focused on the website. We did a decent job of keeping up to date, but it always felt like an afterthought, and if one person's focusing on it, they will do a better job. We could have had another person just monitoring and correcting rumors, just sitting on Hillsborough Local and all the other Facebook pages and referring that back to the JIC or to the PIO. I would love to have another person, like this time machine goes way back, but like if we had before the storm, we had identified resilience centers around the county, just a map with, like for instance, I live in White Cross, the resilience center is our Bravos Market. That's where everybody goes for information. So if we'd known this was going to be bad, it would have been nice to have a flyer up there and at all the other resilience centers saying if we end up needing shelter, it's going to be Smith Middle School, because it's always Smith Middle School, and just, you know, all the stuff that we know, go ahead and have that as a piece of paper on a bulletin board in a gas station. We also, post-storm, I heard later that planning staff and environmental health staff were visiting all the people that had damage. I really would have loved to have given them some flyers that they could have passed out to those people. That would have been huge. And then another person in the JIC could have been working on OC alerts that were more like helpful information. I mean, all of it was helpful, but I mean like stuff about boiled water or you know, make sure you don't cut your leg off with a chainsaw, that kind of stuff. Yeah, so I guess that's my main thing. Hope that wasn't longer than 3 minutes. I'd love to bring back the JIC.
And I forgot to mention, we'll have questions at the end, time for questions and it comes to the end of that. So thank you, Kristin. I have a lot of information there, a lot that we can use going forward to our next incident as well. All right, on to Chapel Hill and Alex.
So yeah, we had a similar experience, especially with capacity is huge. I was out of town. I thought that I could sneak away briefly, and I was not in the path of the storm. So something that struck me was, you know, midday on Sunday, I was already out of town, and I told my niece, who's just a little bit younger than me, I said, I think I might have to work this evening, so like apologies in advance, and because I was there for something the next day, on Monday, and by like 7:30 or 8, we were in a virtual EOC, and I had just disappeared to a room in the house, as we all do. And it was jarring to not be here, to be able to, you know, I live in Durham, but I could have looked out the window and seen how much rain was falling. So it wasn't until I got a picture of what was happening at University Place with the parking lot and the cars underwater that I fully understood what was happening. And it really wasn't until the next day, you know, when the light comes up, where you can really wrap your arms around just how much was affected. So in Chapel Hill, we obviously had Eastgate, University Place, public housing, Camelot Village, which is private property, and also the private residential flooding that's difficult to get your arms around immediately. I think what went well is, even though, you know, I was out of town, our director Susan was in town, and then we've got one other person, Christina, who can help us out. We're really a team of 3 when it comes to crisis comms. So we're scrappy, but pulled it together in terms of being responsive, immediately responsive. One thing that I keep thinking about that this was a good reminder in terms of what to work on is during the storm, in those like immediate moments where you're getting questions about how many people have you rescued, and you really may not know the answer yet. It's easy to want to take the time for it to be perfect, as we often do day to day. But in these situations, you have to just say, you have to get to a point with your police chief, fire chief, where you know you have at least 10 people that you've rescued, and just go ahead and share that information to open that transparency. Because if you sit on that for too long, it becomes tricky. And I think we tried to get it right and then got it wrong. So if I could do it again, we would start with that, at least a certain amount of people rescued. That may sound like a no-brainer right now, but when you're in the moment, those are the things that you kind of forget about or lose track of.
Alex, clarify what you mean. You said you got it wrong, the wrong number.
The wrong number of people, yeah. And this is a great example of, we thought that, so there was a wrong number in one spot, and we thought that we had rescued people from apartments at University Place. It turns out it was people who had walked across the street from Camelot. So we did make contact with people who had been affected by the flooding. And then are you talking about, did you have to rescue them from the water, or is there unit damage? I don't know. So, and I may not know that the next day yet. So, it's around all of those specifics. So keeping things at a really high level, but still sharing information. It's so easy to, the non-comms folks want to just wait. So we all know that. And then I would say, similar to your experience, we set up a kind of business hours with some flexibility EOC for the next 2 weeks just at town hall. And it was really helpful to have people from all the different departments in the same room talking about what the issue was that day. I think that worked really well, and I think we put out somewhere between 15 and 20 updates to council, and that was kind of the core of our broader messaging, or how we were talking about how we were handling different issues. And the last thing I'll say is, because I was out of town, we didn't end up holding a news conference on that Monday after the storm, and I really wish we had been able to, but we just were really aggressive with updates through email to the media and to the community.
Thank you, Alex. You both mentioned, I guess, being out of town and being on vacation. It seemed like this storm was still a little sooner than a lot of them are that hit us here in the state, in July 4th. So just many different obstacles to overcome with that in itself. All right, Cheryl, let's go to Hillsborough.
So I'm sitting up here instead of our communications manager, Catherine Wright, because she was on vacation. And on vacation, several states away, no laptop. And I was coming back from the Outer Banks that day. I had seen something saying this, the day before, the storm may or may not have a name, but it's going to dump a lot of water somewhere. And I thought, well, I don't want to be on the outer. I don't want to be in Nagshead with 10 inches of rain, 5 inches of rain, whatever. Came on home. JC, Lesser McMinn, and I were the two communicators for the town of Hillsborough for this storm. And JC shared a couple of the county's posts Sunday afternoon. It was helpful that there was some county information out there pointing people to the National Weather Service and how to report non-emergency storm damage. And we were both monitoring our town's emergency management text group, which is Hillsborough Police and managers and the safety officer and those folks. And as Sunday evening, you could see that weather conditions were deteriorating, not only because we live in Hillsborough and it just, the heavy rain just didn't stop, but because they were reporting roads that were impassable. So we put up some turnaround, don't drown messaging. And it all kind of felt surreal because there wasn't that coordinated feeling and that urgency at the time. I went to work really early Monday morning knowing that the parks needed to stay closed. Riverwalk would need to be closed, and that people were having trouble coming into work, so we were going to be doing a delay or something. and got a phone call from the utilities director saying, you need to tell everybody to boil their water right now. This was about 7:30 in the morning. And I kind of checked in with her because boil water, to those of you who don't deal with water all the time, boil water advisory is what you put out when you've had a line break, and maybe, probably not, but there could be some bacteria in there. So if you have a compromised immune system or are really young or really older, like you should probably not drink the water. And boil water notice is we found bacteria in the water and you need to boil it before you use it. So I was kind of checking with her, are you sure you want to put that out? And she was like, oh, yes, because our large clear well at the water treatment plant had flooded. The river came all the way up to it, and it has some vents in it, and water had gone in. So we put that messaging out there. We use the Everbridge platform. The town has a section of it just for water alerts, but people have to sign up for that, and there are extra steps involved in that. So we put that messaging out there and put an alert banner on our website, because as soon as people get a message like that, they want to come to the website and see that, yes, this is for real. So this is one of our lessons. It can take an hour for that alert banner to populate in everyone's browser. So next time we will post a news release, even if it just says, boil water until further notice, more information to come. But just so that there can be a news release at the top of the website that will appear right away, whereas the alert banner, at least for Granicus, does not populate right away. It also doesn't unpopulate right away, which we had to explain to everyone on the tail end of that, like when we were ready to lift this, like if you want to lift this at 2, go ahead and let us know at 1 so we can take that part down. Otherwise it will still be there and we'll have a mixed message. We also called Hannah with Orange County Emergency Services and asked for a wider OC alert to go out to our whole water service area to reach more people. And so people who were signed up for town alerts got a message just before 8 a.m. and then at around 10 a.m. those who were signed up for OC alerts but not checked as a water customer received alerts. And of course, as soon as that went out, JC and I were swamped with phone calls of people saying, I got this, is this for real? My wife got this, I didn't get this. My neighbor got this, I didn't get this. Lots of fielding phone calls. And I didn't close the discussion on Nextdoor when I first posted to social media. And we usually close the discussion on Nextdoor so that we're not answering people there, but we ended up leaving it open for a while because people had those questions like, is this for real? Can I take a shower? We also got phone calls from people saying like, well, I took my morning medicine with a big glass of water. Like, do I need to go see someone about this? Just kind of tricky. I mean, kind of on the side, I'm not an expert, but the water in their pipes was fine because it had been in their house all night. It's those kind of questions that we weren't really prepared for them, or for like the immediate closings of some daycare centers. The people called us, I just got a call from my daycare center. Why do we have to pick up our children? So JC and I attended our town emergency management group meeting, which I think was happening at the same time as the county meeting. And honestly, at that point, we were in the meeting virtually and still answering the phone and working on the boil water news release and the updates of storm damage news release. We've talked with Catherine, if there had been 3 of us, we definitely would have sent someone in there, and then I regret not checking in sooner and making sure that you knew what we were working on messaging and what was happening and why. And we spent the first half of that week encouraging people to conserve water and to boil water until Wednesday afternoon. We found what went well is when we got more information from our staff on the details of we are buying water from Durham in 2020 24 hours, the test results will come back. But like, people love getting into concrete, these are the next steps to fix this. As you all know, it can be hard to get those details at first, and then getting agreement to share them with the public. I'm just doing a quick skim of my improvements. I wish, it didn't turn out to be a bad thing, but we have started rescheduling social media posts, and I wish that I had thought, I mean, as it happened, my post for that morning was subscribe to OC Alerts. So when that went out at 8 a.m., it wasn't bad, or like just kind of tone deaf, but in the future, I'll think through, like, if it's raining and isn't stopping, go ahead and cancel the next morning's social media posts. We're looking into possibly being able to send messages through our water billing platform in the future. And just for us, I think in the future, it wouldn't be a communications decision, but our town should assign an employee to go to the water treatment plant and just answer the phone, because they were flooded with phone calls and didn't need to be fielding all of those phone calls.
Thank you, Cheryl. A lot of good stuff there that you were mentioning, that in place for next time. And I think we've all gotten that out of the situation. I think I'm gonna come to our two towns and then get to you all after that, if you don't mind. We'll go to Chapel Hill with Kat Lazorko.
Carrboro, actually.
Carrboro. Look right at you.
I did prepare, I don't think
You
you
should.
should bring,
Okay.
yeah, I did prepare some slides, and I have a lot of pictures too, but I think I can just talk about it. So, sounds like I'm in the camp of people who were on vacation and just kind of coming back. So I was in New Mexico, very dry and dusty, and came in late on Sunday. Thankfully, my coworker Eve Green was here, and she put out the initial two notifications, email notifications to let people know that. First one was, I think, sign up for OC Alerts around 8:30, and then there was another one at 1:30 a.m. After the flooding was really quite observable and devastating. I got in late, kind of just went to bed, and got up in the morning and realized, okay, I need to get into motion. So I went over to the EOC, and what I often do during these sorts of events is ask someone, a member of the police or fire, to take me around. I want to see the town, I want to see what's going on. And, you know, they're able to drive and they have great vehicles, and I'm ready to take pictures. But before I did that, I sat with members of the EOC and just took notes and asked them how the night went and what had happened. So I could already see that it was quite serious. They had done water rescues from two main neighborhoods in Carrboro, Weather Hill Point, and Canterbury Townhomes. Rescued about 100 people from these two different neighborhoods. Waist-high water, you know, it was just a very, very fast-moving torrential downpour. About 10 inches fell in Carrboro over a very short period of time. So I received the kind of briefing from the EOC, and then was able to tour the town. We stopped at Public Works, where I had heard there was some damage. Well, it was basically destroyed. Our Public Works facility was completely destroyed, and there were vehicles kind of tossed in different directions. Police vehicles that were receiving maintenance at Public Works were destroyed, as well as trash trucks and other Public Works vehicles. So when I saw that, I really had the sense, okay, well, we need to, you know, the town manager soon came over, we all huddled and said, let's do a news conference as soon as possible. So we decided to put on we called it a media availability at 2:30 on Monday afternoon. So I kind of used the Orange County virtual media briefing to kind of let reporters that were on that call know that Carrboro was going to have this media availability at 2:30. And our leadership was tremendous. I mean, I really, in retrospect, what I could have done better probably was better prep them, which is what I normally would do, but there really wasn't time. But they were just superb regardless. Our town manager gave the introduction, gave an overview, followed by our police chief, our fire chief, and also our public works director. They're very calm, poised, and I think that was really important for Carrboro because my sense was that people weren't going to notice that Carrboro was experiencing this devastation. They were looking to Chapel Hill, but they were not looking to Carrboro. So we did get, good coverage, good TV coverage from Triangle stations came. I think overall, I think we did frequent daily information posts. Typically, we put out emails to our subscribers, which include media. And then we also amplify through social media, Blue Sky, Nextdoor, Facebook, Instagram, pretty much daily, at least for that following week. We also created, I'm really pleased at how quickly we were able to produce an emergency resources flyer. We did that very quickly. We had that out and distributed in town and up on electric poles and at our outdoor message kiosks by Wednesday. So what that meant to do, how we achieved that was great teamwork. Our Housing and Community Services Department helped, our Public Works Department, really great interdepartmental cooperation, planning, and also it's one of those things where you're creating the printed piece before because you want something to hold your QR code even before you really have your website, your web page fully fleshed out. You're kind of operating both forward and backwards at the same time. We did that flyer in English and Spanish and had that distributed. So I was pleased that we had that done by Wednesday, which seemed pretty quick turnaround in my view. We also did a good job, I think, of really getting out into the community. So I did a lot of visiting to neighborhoods, going, taking photos, taking video, talking to people, and how that helped inform my communications. Our communications was that we would hear needs of our residents, and then we could add or tailor some of our public communications to answer some of the questions that we were hearing. It was very difficult. Carrboro lost its public works facility right after a devastating flood where people need to, put, debris and yard waste and all these kinds of things out on the curb. How do you do that? Just a myriad amount of questions and information, even just with cleanup. I also created a Lightroom album. I don't know if anyone else uses that platform, but it was helpful in talking to reporters that were kind of coming onto the Carrboro story, maybe a little bit late, that I could answer their questions and then also send them the Lightroom album. And then they could see the video of our town manager speaking, from that news conference, the day before, as well as see images of some of the neighborhood damages. So, let's see. I think those were some of the highlights of things that were done well. I think things to improve, talking to our fire chief, who is just amazing throughout. I mean, all of our leadership was just tremendous. But Will Potter is our fire chief. He mentioned wanting to see improvement of warning messages between 8:30 p.m. on Sunday and 1:15 a.m. on Monday. And what's interesting about that in my mind is I saw that same kind of feedback from a resident in a News and Observer article in which the resident was complaining and saying, you know, could you have notified us sooner? And it is an interesting question. It's not necessarily, warning messages are not under our purview. That's another area of communications. But I do think that defining what we mean by alerts, when we say alerts, when we say warning messages, all these kinds of terms kind of get mixed up in one big bucket. And we don't issue warning messages. And when we talk about OC alerts, in terms of what could go, maybe could be improved, maybe it's a misunderstanding on my part, but where do those messages reside? Is there any dashboard or is there any reference place where you can look to find the textual information of an OC alert? When has gone out, when, what are those messages? So there was just, as I started thinking about this deeply, that kind of came up. I think we can always pre-draft messages. We do some of that. We could always do more of that. Should I join the EOC the night before? Maybe. Again, we're extremely small as well. We're 2 people. I'm not sure what we would have been doing at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. I think having a good rest, I was able to hit the ground running on Monday morning. So I think that I really appreciate what we've done well. Orange County and the multilingual messages are just such a great resource, and deeply appreciative of those. And then we just kind of think also about outreach to underserved communities is always an area that can be improved upon. So that's my take.
Very good, thank you. I think a theme that's actually been there throughout my communications career is standing. And I guess, and Kristin and I were discussing this today, I think this is an opportunity for us to speak to the higher ups and say, hey, we need more communications type people. I mean, in disasters and out of disasters. But I mean, emergency time is the most important thing that we do, really. And if something would have been larger than this, it would have shined light on that deficit even more so. But a lot of this stuff there, I love your boards that you have out in the community. It's very valuable that you guys have. So, thank you. All right, to the city of Mebane, Kelly.
So the city of Mebane got hit with what I like to call like the perfect storm. It was just all at once. So similar to all of you guys, I was coming back from out of town, and I was coming back earlier on Sunday, and I could tell the weather was starting to get bad coming back from the beach. So I had my phone by me just in case, and sure enough, at 7 o'clock, I started getting phone calls. So if some of you are familiar, Lake Michael, one of our parks, has been closed for over a year now, and it is undergoing a dam and spillway replacement. And so the first thing that happened was we received, it was about roughly 10 inches of rain in a 90-minute time span. So while we had a coffer dam in place, we lowered the lake levels and we had a coffer dam in place, well, that's a lot of rain in a short time period. So it crested the dam. And so then our police department and our fire department was called out. There were about 9 homes within our breach inundation zone. So those homes, they went to their door, knocked, told them they had to evacuate out of a precaution of safety, and we wanted to make sure nothing happened. Luckily, the dam held and we did not have a failure, so that was great. I give a lot of credit to our city engineer who, when they were planning for this project, they put in a lot of safety measures, and that was one of them. They planned for something like, you can never plan for something like this, but they did their best. So all credit to them. So at about 7 o'clock, I started putting out some messaging. The city of Mebane uses a code red emergency alert notification system. So I was sending out messages on code red, and then we were putting together some of those other messages about, turn around, don't drown. I was getting pictures of the highways around our downtown that was getting pretty bad and flooded. So started putting out that information. I had 2 code red messages drafted and ready to go. One went out around 1:30, 2 a.m., and another one went out around 5 a.m. So at the same time, we share a water treatment plant with the city of Graham, and the Graham Mebane water treatment plant also got a lot of water and was quickly submerged in under about 6 feet of water. Because of that, our primary electrical breaker went out. So then we had water originally in the tanks, and we were able to still supply water. However, pumps stopped working, and then we were calling for backup pumps, and then those pumps were going out. So about Monday morning, I worked around the clock all night, and then on Monday morning, we were putting out messages asking people to please conserve your water. If you can, use bottled water. Well, people, I guess, didn't understand how bad the situation was or drastic the measures needed to be. So the city kept evaluating every day. We were sending out press releases to keep the news informed, posting all of our social media. One thing I wish we probably could have done a little bit better was while we were posting on social media and sending out code red alerts, we did not update the City of Mebane website as quickly as I would have liked. That should have been one of the first things we did, and instead that was not updated until around 10, 11 a.m. Monday morning. So I was also getting calls about that. So then from then on, the website started being updated as soon as a code red or a social media post was sent out. On Wednesday morning, so July 9th, the city was down to less than 2 days of potable drinking water. And so we had to go into a rationing stage 5 mandatory restriction. And this is part of our water shortage response plan. I was not a part of these decisions or in the room when these decisions were made, so I'm not sure maybe why we didn't go into more drastic measures, maybe like a stage 1, 2, or 3 beforehand. But I was notified that that was needed to be sent out. We were, as you can imagine, being inundated with calls from the media. So instead of taking time to separately address each media inquiry, we decided to hold a water shortage response plan news conference, and we invited everybody out. And so we answered questions there. A question we kept getting that unfortunately we just could not address or answer was, when is everybody gonna have water back to normal? Can you give us a timeline? When can businesses reopen? Because a part of the stage 5 restriction was that all businesses had to close except for grocery stores, healthcare facilities, or drugstores. And so in order to kind of help spread the word, we had the police and fire department going around to each business, telling them about the restriction, asking them to close. While we couldn't force everyone to comply and do it, there were, as part of the plan, restrictions that law enforcement would actively enforce compliance, and that would mean like fines to individuals who decided not to comply. But for the most part, citizens did a really good job of banding together and shutting down businesses. A lot of people donated water, which was great, and we were able to put out water distribution sites so people could come and pick up large cases of water for them and their families. So that was really good. It was really nice to see the community come together. And then on July 11th, so Friday, we were able to move into a stage 1 of our water shortage response plan, which was a voluntary conservation. And so that means we had more than 2 days left of drinking water. And our treatment plant was now partially operational to supply water to Mebane. So they were able to get pumps in there to get the water out. And we weren't back to primary Duke Energy power yet, but we were pretty close. So that was really good. So all in all, we just had a bunch of different things happening at once that we had to address. It was difficult, I would say, for me, just because I am a department of 1. So everything you saw happening and doing was a product of me, the city manager, and the assistant city manager. So all of our department heads were working around the clock, trying to get messages out, figure out who we could utilize for support and help, where we could call in other municipalities who weren't inundated with the similar problems to bring in their equipment and tools. So again, like the perfect trifecta of just different things happening all at once. Some of the things that I really liked was we did use our code red notification system. Since I have been with the city, we put out multiple posts a year telling citizens to sign up for it. It is where you'll be the first to find out about these main events going on, such as boil water advisories, notices, kind of just a bunch of different items. And unfortunately, because not everybody was subscribed to Code Red and not everybody, as you all know, is on social media, something that the city has now started to do is on the bottom of our utility bills, we have a QR code citizens can scan, and it will take you to our link tree. And then the link tree has everything listed, all of our social media platforms, so you can subscribe, a link to sign up for Code Red. And then when we get utility billing customers who come in to pay in person or new citizens who come, we ask them when they're there, would you like us to sign you up for Code Red so you're the first to know? So that's kind of one way we've started to kind of address that so that more people are on Code Red and they get these emergency notifications quicker and they know what's going on. But some things we can improve upon for next time, kind of what you all said, you know, it'd be nice to be able to add a little bit more manpower so that I could have one person addressing all the misinformation going on social media and the interesting thoughts some people have. And just, again, somebody who could solely run the website and update it quicker on a more timely manner with the most accurate information. And then in the future, I would like to be able to give the people more of a definitive answer, but some things are out of our control, such as the timeline. You know, you don't want to say to the citizens, we'll give you your water back in a day, and then a day goes by and other things you can't plan for, didn't plan for, that could happen, and then everybody's angry because you said a day and now we're 3 days later and there's still no water. So it's kind of just a balancing act, and you do the best you can to give as many answers as you can. But I did find, like you guys had mentioned, the more answers you could provide as to why you weren't able to have water for them or what was going on, the happier citizens were. They just wanted to be kept in the loop about what was going on.
Very good. I like what you call that, a press conference, to get them all in one place. It kind of makes things easier in the back end of that.
Yes.
And you get them all together.
Saves you some time rather than having to do different interviews with every person. You can just be like, here's one, come ask your questions, and then you can dedicate your time towards the other things you have to get done.
Exactly. Very good, very good. Let's go to Hannah back with Orange County Emergency Services. You set it up. I was going there.
Yeah, so I'm not traditionally what you think of as like a full-time communicator. So I'm one of the emergency managers with Orange County. We're a team of 3 of us, but I'll try to sort of touch on more of my like communication specific role challenges and like highlights from there. So like everybody else, my plane landed at like 6 p.m. on Sunday. I got a call from my sister, said, hey, what's up with that tornado? And I said, oh, I don't know. And then from there, I just started running. And we had to send, I think the first thing that I had to do was the Lake Michael evacuation order. We didn't just use our OC alert system, we used the system where like your phone starts making that like really loud like noise. So we had to use that as our WIA system. So we had to send a WIA for that evacuation order, which is the first time we ever had to do that. And then I took day shift in the emergency operations center for that first week, and then in that initial response. So some of the key things that we do is that emergency response. So that first day, it's the water rescues, it's the missing person searches, it's the getting additional resources, and sort of as that changes, it turns into like longer term response. So it's like water distribution, and then it turns into recovery. So it's setting up that recovery assistance center down in Carrboro, and then bringing in aid. So once when the EOC closed, that's not the end of our like emergency response and recovery. Then we went out and we did our damage assessments. So we had to do damage assessments with the state and federal government to try to turn on those assistance funds. So we were able to get individual assistance for residents who are impacted, and then public assistance was just approved by a Truth Social post from Donald Trump. So now we have our public assistance, which is awesome. And then as well as I manage our OC alert system. So most of the OC alerts that went out were sent by me, unless they were at night, then they were sent by one of the other emergency managers. I think some of the really good things that came out of this, I think it's really important to notice that this was essentially a no-notice event. We knew that there was going to be something, but we knew that we were told worst case scenario like 3 to 5 inches, which for us is completely manageable. But then when you get to that 10 inches, that is a completely different response. That's a completely different landscape that you're looking at. So if you step back and if you treat this as a true no-notice event, the ability of our entire county and all of our partners to activate is absolutely amazing. Like within 24 hours of landfall, when we started to get the rain, we had a shelter open, and you don't see that very often. It's just the ability to quickly respond, quickly get that, not just response actions going, but those recovery actions, and having a recovery center being able to be open by the Wednesday that the storm hit, I think that's a really big testament to just how much everyone was able to drop what they were doing and really come together for that response. So I think that was really good. And I think when we look at our public outreach, a lot of times there's so much more that we can do with public outreach, which is so true, but there's so much that we did right in this scenario. There's so many pushes that the whole county does, and not just when I say county, I mean all of our municipalities. I pulled a report and we had over 1,500 OC alert registrants just in that couple day period after the storm. And that's the biggest push I've ever seen from an OC alert perspective. And it's not a good thing to say, but we had 150 damaged homes identified by our building inspections. And what does that come from? That comes from our crisis track entries. So that was the public having to go in and put a form saying that their house was damaged. And then it was from those individual reports that we were able to send out building inspectors to go and do the damage assessment around. And so just the fact that we were able to find all of those homes and know where they are in the community, being able to be identified as like a damaged home is what really is able to help us turn on those financial assistance programs. So since we had that public outreach telling people that, oh, do you have damage in your home, report your non-emergency storm damage, that's what led us to being able to turn on financial assistance from the state. And now the federal government is really just, that's a community-led effort at that point, just to get it to kick off. And then in addition to that, we did a really good job promoting the, what do they call it, the disaster loan outreach center. So the things that have been happening at the Drakeford, we've had about 200 individual assistance applications, and that's people having to show up in person with the right forms, with the right documentations, at the right times. And that's a really difficult message to be able to share, and it's a very limited time window. We had about a 12-hour warning of, hey, we're gonna be here, we're gonna set up.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that. The state just said it's gonna happen tomorrow.
Yeah, we don't make a lot of decisions in emergency management. Other people make decisions, then we make things happen. And so I think just being able to turn on, being able to promote that message is really awesome. And 200 applicants in just like about a month that it was open is awesome. And really being able to process that, and that directly translates to like money in individual hands. So there's like thousands of dollars that have already been given out and will be continue to be given out throughout that process, which directly ties back to our public information. And then, as well as not just public outreach, but I think we did a really good job. It took us a little bit, but to be able to communicate with our elected officials and like just broader non-response personnel. I think those executive summaries that we've been able to put out every week has been a really good way to say, like, even if we don't have a lot of updates, these are our updates, but then also these are our stars, and like these are the people that we can like promote and show just the vast amount of effort that's been done in our community. I think it's really important to be able to amplify that message as well. When it comes to things that we can improve, I'm thinking of like blue sky operations things. So during a disaster, we know that, like internally, we know that we're going to use readyorange.org is where we go for all of our preparedness information. That's where all of our up-to-date information is going to be sent. So there's no reason why we can't have things figured out in blue sky operations. We can have just little like, hey, go to readyorange.org for updates as like little business cards, and we can just hand them out to people when they're doing damage assessments, when they're out with their environmental health inspections. Like residents saw a lot of people who couldn't necessarily give them the right information, or we couldn't directly message them, but then we have the ability to give them a physical thing to say, hey, this is where you can go to sign up or to get more information. And I think a shift that we really like, a perspective shift that I think would be helpful, is using PIOs and working within that emergency response system, because anyone who's taken one of those ICS, really like jargony type of classes, you kind of know how it fits into the system, but I think there's so many broad communicators, and we have so many communicators throughout the county, and there's no reason why we can't envelop that into our broader emergency response system. And I think it's set up in a way where it can escalate in scope and scale very easily, and we can practice in blue sky operations of how we interact and how we communicate to where it would effectively just, when there is an emergency, it's just continuing to do the things that we do at a higher like pace and scale. But those systems are already in place, that familiarity is already there. And so I brought with me, we have the draft of our after action for the county, and so I just brought some of the stuff that was very specific to public information in those areas for improvement. So some of the things that were highlighted in there are having agreements in place so that way we can leverage like all of our communicators in county and external to the county to bring people in, get them in our systems, and use that as a force multiplier. and then Kristin talked about a JIC, and it's just having to fold into that JIC model is helpful. And then the public information delivery methods, we have so many people that are out there interacting with the community. Let's think of different ways that are non-digital and non-traditional communication pathways to be able to share information. And then it's also looking at, when we look at our OC alert system, how can we make sure that more than just the 3 emergency managers that we have are able to send that message? I think that's really important. Like when we're tapped in, emergency managers are fully tapped in, it's really hard to be able to step away and write that emergency message and be able to send that. And then for those who have used WebEOC before, I think there's a big push in the county to create a version of our WebEOC, which is our virtual platform that we use in an emergency operations center, to build out something just for public information that's collaborative, that it talks to whatever system that the towns are using, so all the towns can still work with the systems that they use, but it talks to a broader system, and then everyone will be able to have access, and everybody will have that real-time situational awareness throughout the county. And then lastly, I just wanted to touch on the point about how to see OC alerts. That is a thing recently implemented. If you go to readyorange.org, down at the bottom, you can see all of the emergency alerts that are sent out and that are currently active, and it'll show you the polygon to which we sent that message out to. So for the boil water notices, you'd be able to go in there and you'd be able to see the outline and who would be affected by that boil water notice. Then if you need a report, to backtrack and look, okay, who wanted to see all the messages that were sent for this time frame, you just email someone from emergency management and we can just export it and send it to you. Yeah.
Thank you, Hannah. I want to commend Hannah. She mentioned the recovery center. I was sitting kind of across from her for a couple hours, but she was pulling that together. It happened very, very quickly. At one point, she's like, we only had 2 people there, and then all of a sudden, we had a full room. It's a very good job on that, Hannah. So we'll go to Katie with OWASA.
Hi, I don't know if this is on or if it's on. Okay. So OWASA, the way I think we've all been summarizing it is our water and sewer infrastructure fared very well compared to a lot of damage that happened throughout the county. So we were very lucky in that way. We had 2 major sustainable sanitary sewer overflows that were reportable, and obviously reporting on those publicly, they're state requirements, and also we want to make sure people know about them, especially if they're near them, to stay away from those waters. We know that people have all kinds of thoughts about what that means if there's an overflow, and we want them to really understand what that means. But we were lucky in that we were able to access those areas relatively quickly and fix those and even reroute them until permanent fixes could be made so that they went back into the wastewater system rather than continuing to overflow into the environment. We had 1 line break, I think, one line break, which was in Camelot Village, water line break. I think we're fortunate, but that's probably because our water lines are underground and a lot of those weren't exposed to trouble. The reason we had the sustainable sewer overflows is because some of those are exposed, especially over creeks, which are where a lot of the flooding was, and things like dumpsters, large boulders were coming down creeks and hitting those sewer lines. And then our wastewater treatment plant, even though it had catastrophic, never before experienced flooding, if you guys are familiar with our wastewater treatment plant on Mason Farm Road, it is at one of the lowest, if not the lowest point in Chapel Hill, and that's because that gravity feeds our wastewater system, so it gets all the wastewater to our wastewater treatment plant. So it does flood regularly, and it is on Morgan Creek, and so we saw flooding there that was much higher than the highest flooding that we had seen in history. And I think one person described it as, we've had the amount of rain that we had, which was like 8 or 9 inches in that area, but we had it in 3 hours instead of 3 days, I think was the estimate. So but the only damage to the wastewater treatment plant that affected wastewater treatment operations was the UV system, which is the last step in the wastewater treatment plant, was down for a few hours, which was incredible. And that's just because that room flooded and water went into the electrical system there. And that was able to get rerouted. We have several UV channels. They were able to reroute into one channel. And so we just overall got extremely lucky. Some of the communications, well, we're very lucky that we have a team of 3, so my colleague Bree Carter and I, and then our Director of Community Relations, Mary Tiger, we were all available, we were all there, and we were all working together. So we were splitting up notices on our sanitary sewer overflows, our press releases about those. So there are 2 separate things we have to do, public notice and press release. And then our social media posts, and then we kept a running web post where we didn't keep posting because we didn't want old information to get confused with new information, so we just kept updating the web posts. One of the advantages that we had as communicators was that our staff were on site at all of these places that make our water and wastewater systems work. So staff are always at the water treatment plant because they're running it 24 hours a day. Staff are always at the wastewater treatment plant running it 24 hours a day. And then anytime we have a storm or we're expecting heavy rains, we have staff at our reservoirs to keep an eye on how high the reservoirs are getting. So we had staff there reporting this is the water level throughout the event. So as communicators, we're very fortunate in that we're getting constant information. Our staff are amazing at communicating with us, which I know that's challenging, especially with their important jobs, and we're all in positions where the people who have the information that we need have really important jobs, and sometimes it's not their top priority to stop and tell us about it. So we're really lucky in that way. OWASA is pretty small. We're like 140, I think, people now. And so we have text chains between our leadership and communicators where we're all sharing this information, and that's super helpful. One of the surprises that we had is one of the most talked about and contentious things that came out of the storm was whether University Lake Dam was a cause of major flooding, or whether University Lake Dam had some sort of failure or was not managed properly or something like that. So one of the biggest challenges since the storm has been making sure that the communities impacted downstream of University Lake Dam understand how the dam works, understand what we keep track through heavy rain events of how high the water is over the dam. This was an extraordinary 500-year flood, they're estimating, right? So at University Lake, no one who's worked at OWASA who's alive remembers the water being this high at the dam. So it's 93 inches of water going over the dam. University Lake Dam is a very simple dam. It's just an earthen berm over cement, essentially, and we have, there's no closing a gate or opening a gate or releasing some water. So what comes in on the streams to University Lake exits University Lake and ends up in Morgan Creek, and then we have neighborhoods downstream of the lake that are impacted by the water that comes into the lake and comes out. So we've participated in a community meeting with Libbie Hough to talk about how the dam works and what OWASA's role is during storm events like this and reporting the levels of water in University Lake. We've had major stories written about the impacts to that community, which is one of many neighborhoods impacted in our county during the storm. And we've shared I made a flyer for the neighborhood because fortunately the HOA director for this neighborhood reached out to us and said, we think maybe there's some misinformation going around about the dam and your responsibility for flooding and things like that. So one of the first things we did is when he reached out to us is we created a document with some information about that, and also people wanted to know what to do with their water accounts if they were moving, if they were moving out temporarily and renovating. They didn't know whether to turn things off or leave things on, so we shared some information about that with those folks, and that is ongoing. One of the things that we learned that is going to be very important going forward is making sure that community and folks downstream specifically of University Lake Dam is understanding what the dam does, what OWASA can do during an event like this, what we can't do, and just their awareness that they are, where they live is below a large reservoir. University Lake, as you know, is a smaller of our 2 reservoirs, but it's still significant if you live right down the way, right? So, if we have regular communications with people who live there about what that means and what they might experience, especially if we experience something like this again, then those folks will be obviously more prepared for what they can do and prepared for receiving notices and alerts in a situation like that.
All right, thank you, Katie. One of the key things you said was, you have people on site to give you information. I mean, that's our main commodity. And I know Hannah and Kirby and Sarah got tired of me asking them questions about, hey, what's going on here? What's this and what's that? But it's very important as communicators to get information from the actual scene so we can get it out and so we can translate it, right? When it comes to us, it can be in jargon or not in, the right language to get it out. So it's going to take time to get that out. So thank you all. Thank you. Very good. Let's give them a round of applause for So what did we learn? What our main point? Next July 4th, nobody go out of town. So I think we have about 10 minutes for some Q&As and things you may have heard, some thoughts you may have that you want to share with the panel, or something you may have heard they said, or you want to reply to that. So I'll pause for any questions from our group here.
You may not be able to see all the suggestions in the what to do for next time / blue sky tasks, but
Yeah, that's a good segue. So I'm Nell Gillis. I'm with the Orange County Sustainability, for those who don't know me. I just appreciate all of the hard work that all of y'all did during the event, after the event, and also in this sharing out all this information. It's extraordinary to hear about it. One of the things I really appreciate is that during the event, some heat messaging went out that we had previously developed. So this idea of the blue sky stuff that we can develop ahead of time before the next event, I think is really important. I think that when I'm thinking about the things that really arose for me is this idea of these resilient communities, resilient centers. That's something that we are in sustainability looking to find funding for. So that we can build more resilient communities and have centers that are designated for people to go to. So I just want to say that we're here for that. We've been thinking about it and talking about it a lot over the last couple of years within the Sustainability Directors Network, that's regional for sure. I think helping people prep a little bit more ahead of time is something that's coming up a lot. Learning not to talk about these events as 500-year storms. Which we did not do very much of during the event itself. It came up a couple of times today. As we all know, we're in different times. There's communities across the country who are having 100-year storms every 3 months now, right? And I think after Helene, that was a real wake-up call for this state for sure. I have family up there that's still in recovery. I think these after messages after the event around cleanup, boiling water, what do we do with our fridge? What kind of PPE do I need to wear if I'm going to be in a mold area? Those sorts of things are blue sky messages that we can be working on. I love the idea of more trained PIOs. I think, and folks helping with writing those OC alerts. I really heard what Hannah was saying, that having just 3 of y'all writing those in the moment is not enough. This idea of a deeper bench, I think, was really important to me. I did hear some stuff in the community that they wanted us to coordinate a little bit more with mutual aid groups, and I think that's something we can, we're doing that in sustainability. We're reaching out to mutual aid groups in the community, trying to find ways to kind of build coalitions for these events, that when these moments do come, we can all communicate as one together. So that's something we're thinking about. I think that's it. Debris removal. There was confusion, especially in places like Camelot Village, from what I've heard, about where to put their stuff, if they did put it outside, how to mark it appropriately. Like a refrigerator, people needed a system for how to mark it as something that needed to be discarded or taken to the appropriate waste facility. There were some bad actors that we heard incidental reports about going around and taking appliances and furniture and things and then reselling them as okay things to other community members. So just knowing that that's another kind of blue sky thing that I think we can get ahead of would be great. I just want to say that overall, like, it's my job to really be thinking a lot about disasters, climate change events, impacts on communities, and how to do better. I was out of town for this event, came back, like many of you. I was amazed watching at how much happened and how quickly it happened. I've only been in my position for about a year and a half. It was impressive for a first rodeo, for an event of this size that quick. It was amazing. And so all the things that I'm saying, I just want to say are just like, from my perspective, fine tuning. And that we're even talking about that we can do these things during blue sky, I just think is amazing. So thank you to everyone here and for all that anybody in this room did during the event too. It was deeply appreciated.
Thank you, Mel. You're right. We were doing a deep dive with the heat messaging a few days before the tropical storm hit. So just
and Kirby did such a good job of carrying that message.
Yeah.
I watched him talk in some of the press conferences. It was incredible to see it evolve in real time in a casual sort of way. It just sort of came up and then he said it, and really awesome. So yeah.
definitely. Thank you. Other feedback, questions, input?
Hi everyone, my name is Kaylani Allen. I'm the Communications Manager for PEPR, Department of Environment, Agriculture, Parks, and Recreation. I too was out of town when this happened. And I think the thing that I learned was that our office or our department needs a backup, because I am the Communications Manager for our entire department. We do have someone that leads our Recreation Department Communications, or Division Communication as well. But I think what I'm seeing now and from the panelists is having someone other than yourself be able to help out when you are not there. I did try and log on when I could and share messages as well, but I think that is something that I learned today as well.
All right. Thank you, Kaylani.
Kevin Smith, Orange County Schools. I was not out of town, but I still say that because I was there as the flood started coming into my apartment in Midtown. But I would say that for all the reasons that we've talked about, you want to have a deep bench and make sure that you have redundancy, because you may very well be in a place that's going to be without power for the next 48 or 72 hours, right? So for all those reasons, making sure that there's not just cross-functional, hi Jayla, Jayla Davis works on my team, and we do share a lot of functions, but also making sure that your peers, people who oversee other departments, have awareness and capability to at least step in and not take ownership of tasks, but advocate for tasks, so that when teams do have to chip in and that deep, the lack of a deep bench emerges as a factor in your response and recovery, you just really never know, because we were having to coordinate things like canceling meal services and other things. The schools were out, so I think there's a lot of assumptions about what schools went through or didn't go through, but we were in the middle of serving hundreds of meal boxes every day during the summer and had to coordinate, canceling that service the very next day because of power, because of food availability, because of staff in recovery themselves. So I think one of the things that often gets lost when you're not in the communications slipstream is how many different things can slip through the cracks when you are the one person trying to make sure everybody's being covered. So huge props to everyone in this room, because I know what it takes to go through that, even if you have to go find a new spot to set up your Wi-Fi.
Exactly. It's like you're holding 10 things up at the same time, and then one slips, and hey, what happened to this? And the other 9 things are going smoothly, so it's all goes in communication.
I already have a microphone, but I was just going to add, we were lucky at OWASA because we were all in town. We've all worked as a team in emergency events before together with our specific team, so we were very lucky in that vein. But one of the thoughts I just had in terms of wishing you had a deep bench is maybe identify the people in your organization that work in other areas that are good writers, that are super smart, that are good communicators in general, and talk to them about, hey, if we have an event like this, could we maybe count on you to step onto our team for a minute
see if you can help us out. And they might be able to do things like write your social posts, or draft something for you, or edit something for you because you're crazy and can't read your own work clearly during an event like that. So that's just a thought, because we all know there are certain people that just kind of have that skill that might be willing, if they're not swamped with other things based on what type of event it is, might be able to step in and support you in that way.
And I would say, of course, train them too in advance if you can, because that'll
That helps.
lessen some fears, and they don't understand what they're going to be doing when they're sitting in there, so.
I just want to second that. I looked up our old JIC from COVID-19, and I was looking at who filled these positions. The person who was doing social media was a dental hygienist, who also happened to have a master's in public information. We had OC Alerts was the front desk person in the dental clinic. I mean, yes, you just need people that are, just smart. Yeah.
Super smart.
Super smart.
And smart.
Yeah. And there's a lot of them in the 1,300 people in Orange County. We can find them.
And Kristin, didn't you circulate, I feel like, just after this event, I think you circulated a list for us where we could, a spreadsheet where we could go in and we could fill in our names if we were interested in helping out, and then also what some of our skill sets were that might be useful.
I will recirculate, because I think Libbie and I are the only ones who filled it out.
Yeah, okay, all right.
We will recirculate that. Yes, I love that.
And Alicia and I are
speaking
the
different
only
languages.
other PIOs in the county
Right.
besides Kristin.
Yeah, and thank goodness now Will too.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Deepening the bench. Look how many stars we have.
Well, while I go to Mike, I'll just say one more thing. OC Alerts, I know that we had 1,500 people sign up, during or after this event, which is great, but there's also been a lot of chatter in the community that they'd love to see us do a larger communications push across municipalities, where we just say we need, over half of Orange County residents to sign up for this. We're going for 50% or 59% or whatever. Ask, if you're already signed up, ask 3 buddies, something like that.
Let me get Kat first, up here she had one, then we'll go.
Yeah, actually, my comment kind of connects with yours. I wanted to react to Hannah's mention that there were kudos given to non-digital outreach and really trying to think that through. I would really love for this group to really kind of do an analysis of who's on the receiving end of a lot of these networks that we have. Because I think there's a false sense among some leaders that when we're issuing information or get the word out, that there's all this vast number of people on the other end, receiving end, and it's really not the case. And I am concerned about OC Alerts as well. I think about those of you in the room who have email distribution lists, for example, in school districts where you have every family household is, you have a very unique list that could be valuable during emergencies. We should remember you, and as well as OWASA, because Chapel Hill and Carrboro does not manage, we don't manage the water utility, we do that through OWASA. So I would really love to do an analysis of and also how does OC Alerts work? How is it that some notifications, some messages will set my phone into buzzing and sounding off, whereas an alert is different? And what's the difference between an alert and a warning and all of these things? And sometimes, last piece is that I think sometimes folks in the EOC think that when they're thinking about communications, they're encircling more than what we have capacity to do. And so kind of delineating where our area is, as opposed to, like, we don't send out warnings. That's not what we do. We're good before the event and after the event. During the event, that's an emergency. We leave that to the emergency professionals. But anyway, just kind of delineating some of that in terms that we're using frequently.
I just want to add real quick that, because I keep thinking about what you were saying about the WIA alerts, the ones that, and I know that there are a lot of restrictions around what activates sending that. when we talk about with the community, especially when people are thinking about it, how important the cell phone, like you go into the phone, like OC alerts is opt-in. So that's always gonna be a challenge, I think. So that push, that annoying push that goes out to your phone, those are actually life-saving. So weaving that into our conversations, because when you think about audience and you think about the fastest way to get a message to anybody, that's it. That's the time that we live in. And with a no-notice event, that's all you have. And you will correct me if I'm wrong, Hannah, but a lot of that is coming from the National Weather Service at the most basic level.
Yeah, so just a little bit of background, like clarity on that. So the National Weather Service, they send out anything weather related they send out. So if you get the tornado warnings, like beep, 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 tornado warning, that's all National Weather Service. It runs the less severe ones, like severe thunderstorm warnings, those kind of things, those go through the OC alert system. So we built in a backup to where the National Weather Service feeds into OC alerts pushes that out. And then when it comes to those, like, we have thresholds, and there's thresholds set by us and thresholds set by, I guess, the FCC on what we can send those messages for. But those like extreme, life-threatening acute messages, we're able to send out. And the evacuation order for Lake Michael was the first one we ever sent that anyone knows of in the county.
Yeah, yeah.
I just want to say really quickly, really like the idea of working together to promote OC alerts. We have this past year done a big campaign to get people, our Hillsborough residents, signed up for the water and sewer alerts, because it is an extra step in the OC alerts process. We use a business card size promotion of it that has QR code. And JC and Cheryl went around our holiday parade giving it out to people. It's perfect. You can share it with you guys what it looks like in case you'd like to use it as well. And we also really want to do what Kat and Eve are doing in Carrboro with the kiosk in neighborhoods, because we do need a non-digital way to share information.
Yeah. So your mileage may vary, and I don't want to speak too readily for Andy and Chantal and Carrboro or any school system, but you know, one of the things that we hold on to in the ability to email or send a text message or telephone, robocall, or even push notifications to 7,000 children and their families, or 11 or 12,000, or imagine 250,000, right? And we're very, very cautious and reticent about what we send out, how we send it out, and yet I think that this group, one of the things that we've done in the past when we did a tabletop exercise to sort of look at how we dovetail, how we get information back and forth, and how we get authoritative information from one another, I think we have a very strong interest in understanding how things come down from emergency services, or from from county government, or from the DOT, or from Duke Energy. Like, when very large events are happening, it's amazing how quickly we fall back to very constricted pipelines of information. Things that we really, really want and need as PIOs are very often very hard to come by, and folks end up using text messaging to try and get someone who will answer them in ways that still mystify me. It is truly mystifying that we don't have clearer communication back and forth between emergency management in particular and some of the, whether it's at the government level or other groups. So I would say that for us to look ahead, that's something that we would definitely want to talk about, is municipal, county, and any elected organizations being able to find much smoother pathways to better information is, I think, a very high. I learned that not just from watching how Helene, I think about the way you wanted to share information about what people shouldn't do in response to Helene. Not a very high crisis point, and yet it was really important for us to be able to share information that had high community value. So I'm glad that we're having this conversation, but I think there's another level or two for us to get into. Oh, hey, Kristin. All right.
Leslie?
I was just wondering if you have a table for OC alerts at the upcoming road shows.
That's a great idea, we'll do that. I was going to mention too, our office and the Office of Civic Rights and Civic Life, yeah, I'll get it right today. We've been working on a strategic communications plan. So every time something happens that we want to reinvent the wheel, and we have 2 listening sessions for our external folks on the Wednesday, the 15th of October, and Wednesday, the 22nd of October. I'll send it out to you all. If you could, it's basically, we're going to try to figure out how do people want to receive information, how do they feel like we're doing, what can we do better. A lot of the stuff we're talking about, we're hoping to capture from also our internal, we're having a staff one, and then externally, and we'll share that with all of you guys.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Y'all can help us amplify that. That would be awesome. So please, maybe put them on your board just to it.
You have a flyer.
All right, thank you.
All right, I think we're ready to move along. We have about 4 minutes left. We want to save time for any last burning comment that has to get out from anybody.
My only comment, real quick, if anyone wants to elevate the OC alert message, I have about 1,000 postcards in my office, and I'd love to give all of them away.
Yeah, for our road show, it'd be great.
And how many are on the system total?
I want to say, I think public opt-in is 40-something thousand right now.
And we've got 150 accounts, so.
And is there a way to make it not opt-in?
We've explored that option, so to not take a lot of time, there's 2 different ways we can send it. We have an opt-in and then like an opt-out. We do send opt-out messages occasionally. With that comes through like, that's phone lines though, and it's a little fuzzy, but not perfect, but getting better.
Thank you, Anna. All right.
I've got one burning desire. We've been working cross-municipally with Orange County and the municipalities to develop a heat action plan, using that as a case study for all climate change events and disaster events, with the first ever heat protocol for communication strategy. So we have a protocol that we developed for a communication strategy that we've been testing out with the municipalities and with the county. For heat. Our hope is that whatever we're developing with that is going to be helpful for all other climate change events and resilient sort of communication strategies that need to be developed. When I say first ever, they're telling us it's the first one in the state for a communications protocol for some sort of event. So we're thinking in this direction and want to be doing more. Yeah.
Thank you. What a great and important discussion. I wonder if this group's ever invited leadership to these meetings so they can hear some of this stuff that we're saying. So the county managers and town managers. That may be a good one once a year if we can get them here and just have kind of a discussion with them as well to hear some of this information. So about 2 minutes. Any group announcements that we need to share with everybody?
Hi. Hi, I'm Taylor Gay. I work for the Chamber for Chapel Hill and Carrboro. I'm the Business Success Navigator, so I'm relatively new. It's like a 1-year position so far. And we are hosting a lunch and learn panel discussion for those who, so it's a couple of different people. It's our local area representative for the SBA, so she'll be there speaking on like what's been done, what money and loans are still available, what they can do. The second thing, the second type of person will be a lawyer who specializes in leases and things like that. So being able, and just like in general contract agreements to see how you're covered, because I think that came up for a lot of people. They thought they had some flood insurance, or they thought they had some, little line in their contract, and then they didn't. And so talking about that, advising them, not direct advice, but just general advice. And then, so it's a panel discussion, and I believe there's like one other person that I can't remember right now. Oh, someone who went through Helene and like has some experience about like what that experience was like working with the government to get aid. And so that's coming up on October 1st, and I'm going to send it out obviously. But we're hosting a panel lunch and learn. It's a check-in after Chantal to like make sure businesses understand like, yeah, we were there with you when it happened, but we know that you can't recover in just like 4 weeks.
Some more hands back there.
It was not.
That was a lot.
It's not related.
All right. Anything? Obviously, our next meeting is in November.
November 18th, ADA. Woo! All right.
So please fill out the survey that you got. Kristin and I are collecting the responses so we can work up the panel and give you the information that you need. It might not be all that you need, but at least it'll, it'll start to fill in some blanks. And then we're going to...
Yeah, make sure we get the sign-in sheet back as well. I guess we'll get these notes to everybody once they're written up and sent out the information, so.
Oh, and I'll send out the survey. We had 7 people fill out the survey about this, but I'll send it one more time and then we'll collate those all and kind of create a big document with all of this information.
And if you have other thoughts as you drive down the road, email us.
So awesome, thank you all for coming out today. We'll see you all in a couple of months.